My name is Ryan Pickering, and I will be presenting Gender Equity in Sports. The origin of gender ideologies. A gender ideology refers to interrelated ideas and beliefs that are widely used to define masculinity and femininity, identify people as male or female, evaluate forms of sexual expression, and to organize social relationships. Most societies' dominant gender ideology is based off three orthodox ideas and beliefs. Number one, there are only two genders, male and female. Number two, heterosexuality is normal and any deviance from this is seen as wrong, unnatural, and immoral. Physically, men are stronger and more inclined to hold positions of power and leadership rather than women in the public sphere of society. The two-sex classification system. The two-sex classification system is a deeply integrated moral idea that gender only has two forms, male and female. In more recent years, there has been a movement in the younger generations to challenge this orthodox gender ideology. However, this movement has not become accepted by the majority of society. The orthodox gender ideology causes people to view males and females as unequal. Males are viewed as having more power and influence. Men are more likely to defend the two-sex classification because it benefits them more than it does females. Men see their masculinity as directly linked to their influence and power. Boys are often pushed into this role of being a strong masculine man because they believe it is what needs to happen to preserve the control men have over sports and political power. Orthodox gender ideology in sport. Sports were created and tailored to men at a time when women were viewed as incapable and too weak to participate in such aggressive sports. We are seeing a change in societal gender beliefs. However, sports continue to uphold the same orthodox gender ideologies that played a part in creating modern sport. 1. Male-dominated. Being qualified in sports means possessing masculine characteristics or performing like a man. Male-identified. What men value is assumed to be valued by all mankind, making sports a man's world that revolved around men and manhood. Therefore, women's sports must be identified explicitly. Male-centered. Men in men's lives are the expected focus of attention. Therefore, there are a few women's sports represented in sports stories, legends, records, events, Hall of Fame, and media programming. Challenges for women in sport. While women have made big strides to overcome societal inequalities, sports remain male-dominated. When women hold positions of power in sports, they sometimes raise suspicion and are assumed to gain the role unfairly. When women started to challenge social sports norms in the 20th century, myths were created to discourage and scare them. Some of these included being hit in the chest by a baseball would lead to breast cancer, or playing strenuous sports would damage the uterus, making childbirth difficult. Progression towards equal rights. In 1972, the U.S. Congress passed the Title IX law, which stated, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. If this was not followed, educational institutions risked losing all funding from the federal government. From 1972 to 2014, the participation rate of women in sports increased dramatically. Participation restrictions have decreased amongst women. However, in poorer nations and for low-income women in wealthy nations, more changes will need to be made to allow them better opportunities. Informal and alternative sports. Informal or alternative sports are more times than not dominated by men. Girls and women usually have to prove that they have outstanding skills to be accepted by the males in the sport. Even this isn't always enough, and sometimes it takes the good word of a male participant to convince the others to allow a girl to participate. Because Title IX doesn't apply to informal sports, it's going to take a change in societal gender ideologies before women may be accepted by their male peers. Women holding positions of power. Most positions of power in sports are held by men, and the ones that are held by women are usually not respected as much. Men hold most of the power in women's sports and make most of the decisions that impact women's sport. Women struggle to gain any authority in men's sports and hold no obvious power that could have an impact on men's sports. Data research has shown that women in administrative and coaching jobs are underrepresented. When Title IX became a law in 1972, 90% of women's teams were coached by women, but In 2016, that number dropped to 43%. Men have established connections in men and women's sports, and women do not, which makes it difficult for women to obtain jobs. Women are threatened by the increased risk that they will experience sexual harassment, which discourages many women from staying in their positions or even applying because of the challenges they could face. Search committees usually use evaluative criteria that is outdated and based on the orthodox gender ideology. People on search committees often favor men because traditionally leadership and power has been linked to masculinity. In programs that lack women employees, there is pressure to hire women only to avoid charges of discrimination and not because they stood out to them as the best candidate. Equity barriers. Privatization of sports and budget costs. Boys and men's sports programs are less vulnerable to budget cuts because they have had more time to develop fans, support, and overall legitimacy. Women's sports are not as established, generate less revenue, and have promotional and developmental costs that male sports do not have anymore. Resistance to government regulations. Today, people will argue that Title IX interferes where it shouldn't because women aren't naturally drawn to sports, and trying to make men and women equal in sports will only hurt men and boys. Cultural emphasis on cosmetic fitness. The media often portrays women in sports as attractive and slim rather than fierce competitors. Marketing campaigns play off the insecurities of women and make sure their ads show women in sports in a way that will make other women feel bad about their own figure. Trivialization of women's sports. Because gender ideologies were established based off men's sports in the past, spectators often believe that because women don't perform the same as men or they don't play like men, then they aren't as interesting. Male-dominated, male-identified, and male-centered sports organizations. Gender ideologies have created a shared sense of manhood. Boys are taught that playing sports is what makes you tough and masculine. This perceived orthodox of masculinity privileges men more than women and leads women to feeling unwanted and unaccepted in sports. Sexuality and gender equity. In sports, male heterosexuality became a cultural idea very quickly. Sports were known for being places that involved homophobia and discrimination. Many sports organizations have expressed their support for the LGBTI community and claim that any discrimination or negative comment will have consequences. Lesbians in sports. There are many stereotypes involving lesbians in sports, such as if you play softball, you will be a lesbian. If you cut your hair short, people might think you're a lesbian. Lesbians are predatory and want to convert others to their way of life. Many sports teams have adopted a don't ask, don't tell policy over the years. While now there are certain laws in place to protect LGBTI people, however, many fear harassment and homophobia and keep their identities to themselves. Gay men in sports. In men's sports, the acceptance of homosexuals is significantly less than women's sports. A homophobic vocabulary is still prevalent, and fear prevents most male athletes from coming out to their teammates. The existing gender ideology that sports make you manly along with homophobia within sports communities still exists, and is the reason many men feel like they have to hide their feelings for their other men. While girls may high-five or hug, men feel like they have to express their manhood and may resort to arm punches and fist bumping. Transgender and intersex people in sports. In 2004, the IOC approved a policy that allowed trans athletes who had undergone sex reassignment surgery and had 2 years of supervised hormone replacement to compete in the chosen gender category. The NCAA does not require sex reassignment surgery and only requires 1 year of testosterone suppression for trans women to compete in women's sports. Trans men have a medial exemption to take testosterone but are not eligible to compete in women's sports. With the two classification systems still the accepted gender ideology, it's unclear when decisions about how to include intersex or gender nonconforming persons to sports will be made. How to achieve equity in sports. Achieving gender equity in sports is still a work in progress and may be for the many years to come. It is going to take men and women together who are willing to address changes in our sports today. One way, grassroots activism. Putting laws in place can only go so far without the need for change being proven. Certain actions for doing this may include confronting discriminatory practices, insisting in fair and open employment practices in all areas, including athletics, keeping track of equity progress, learn and educate others about the history of gender discrimination, Package and promote women's sports as revenue producers so participation can be increased with financial incentive. Recruit female coaches through internships and training programs. Create an environment which is supportive for women and establish policies to eliminate sexual harassment. Men benefit from gender equity too. Sports promote heavy contact sports as the prime molder of masculinity and manhood, but it doesn't consider that men have different interests. Also, not every boy has the body type for tackle football. Recently, there has been a trend in research that shows that a growing number of young men are not identifying themselves with the orthodox gender ideology. They are less violent, emotionally open, and compassionate. With more men blurring the line between masculine and feminine, it makes gender equity more achievable. Empowering women through sports. Sports allow women to feel powerful and in control of their bodies, as well as reject the idea that women are weak, dependent, and powerless. Reasons women don't push the normative boundaries for gender equity. They fear they will be identified as ungrateful for the position that they already have. Celebrity feminism, which is promoted, is nothing like their everyday struggles. High media women athletes have little control over their sports participation and little political voice. This is a video about women's perceptions of what like a girl means.
Hi, Erin.
Hi.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you some actions to do and just do the first thing that comes to mind. Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
Looks like hair.
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl.
Aw. My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
Is like a girl a good thing?
Actually, I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. It sounds like a bad thing. It sounds like you're trying to humiliate someone.
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out, and when somebody says you hit like a girl, it's like, well, what does that mean? Because they think they're a strong person. It's kind of like telling them that they're weak and they're not as good as them.
And what advice do you have to young girls who are told they run like a girl, kick like a girl, hit like a girl, swim like a girl?
Keep doing it because it's working. If somebody else says that running like a girl or kicking like a girl or shooting like a girl is something that you shouldn't be doing, that's their problem. Because if you're still scoring and you're still getting to the ball on time and you're still being first, you're doing it right. It doesn't matter what they say. I mean, yes, I kick like a girl and I swim like a girl and I walk like a girl and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that is not something that I should be ashamed of. So I'm going to do it anyway. That's what they should do.
If I asked you to run like a girl now, would you do it differently?
I would run like myself.
Would you like a chance to redo it?
Changing the way we do sports. There is a need for new sports programs that challenge the everyday norms and allow people to see themselves as participants. Welcoming cultures with meaningful sports experiences created by men and women begin to erase normative boundaries of the two-sex system. Those in power positions need to envision and create alternatives for the future, and those who already envision it need to gain access to power positions. There's a need to change the idea of masculinity and what it means in sports.